Welcome back to the Wolf of Property and Casualty. I'm your host, Derek Lasniak. With over 15 years of commercial broking experience, focus on the middle market, upper middle market, national account space. And if you caught the last episode or 2 episodes ago titled, If You Do the Crime, you'll know that I'm introducing kind of a new lane to this series. And the title is going to be Commissions to Convictions. And the basis of that would be going back and listening to that episode. But, my journey to the top of not really just commercial insurance sales, but really any sales. And then my battle with substance abuse and unhealthy relationships. And unfortunately, what led me to spending 3 months in county jail. And it's allowed me to have a chance to want to be uncomfortable and to be vulnerable. And I felt called to talk about not just insurance, but which I love, but also to talk about my experiences and revelations that I've had in hopes that they might reach somebody, give them some insight, give them some warnings, so to speak. And the first title is of this series is Commissions to Convictions. Not all mentors are role models. And here's a disclaimer before I jump into this, because I've done an entire episode on the value of mentorship. And I'm not talking about a specific person in my life. I'm talking about the concept. And I worshiped way too many negative things during my run of success, constantly seeking validation, substance abuse, searching for fun because I couldn't find it on my own in all the wrong places. But I think the concept of your professional life ruling your world allows you to kind of forget that not everybody in it, especially those you hold to the highest regard, are necessarily the person you want to be. And I'm finding that out pretty late in the game as I rediscover the person that I want to be. And so to start it off on a light note, I wanted to think back, and depending on what time period that you are, you'll recognize this. But as I was kind of thinking through my head what I wanted to talk about in this episode, I remember the great Charles Barkley, and we all know Charles Barkley today as the amazing commentator. I just heard something really interesting. Only Charles Barkley can get away with saying what Charles Barkley says on the air today. And if you really dig into Charles Barkley, you'll know that he's a compassionate person, and you can read about all the things that he was trying to stand up for on TNT's Inside the NBA before it moved to ESPN. And there's a lot of heart-wrenching stories. Charles Barkley, at cancer centers. But way back when Charles Barkley was playing for the Sixers or the Suns, he did a commercial with Nike where he said, I am not a role model. He flat out said it, I'm not a role model. I mean, he said that in interviews because at the time he wasn't trying to be a role model. He was trying to, live his life as the best basketball player. And it got me thinking as I was preparing for this episode that there is a difference between being a mentor and being a role model. And I had tremendous mentors in my life, and some of them probably could have been terrific role models. However, I wasn't thinking about the distinction between the two. Now, my story is somewhat specific. I didn't have coming into the business world be great role models in my life. I came from a small family. I lost my father really young, and I probably lost that. And if you're sitting here thinking that role models are for kids and the term role model is for your kids at home and who they look up to, I would say think again, because the vulnerability that you have to bad influences continues for a long, long time. And maybe depending on your mental state and your fortitude inside, it's something that's acceptable all the time. And what makes this episode kind of interesting for me to talk about is I was precocious and I was proud of the mentoring that I did. And the mentoring I did was my form of paying it forward because I had received such great mentorship. But when I think back to the younger producers that I mentored when I was an acting professional, I was even up until before I went to jail, I was so proud of my mentorship. I think I said on my episode, it was one of the purest things that I did because I didn't get paid for it. And it brought me some self-fulfillment. And there was some purity in it. I love to do it, but let's not kid ourselves. I was validated as being smart enough to be a mentor. I enjoyed them looking up to me for insurance knowledge. But I lost sight of the fact that I sit here now, not employed, having spent 3 months in jail, and I wasn't a mentor, or I was a mentor, but I wasn't a role model. Role models don't disappear. Role models don't go to jail. Role models don't get divorced. Role models don't never see their kids. Role models don't, have drinking and substance abuse problems. If you think about the people that you have in your life that are mentors, and you think about the things that they support professionally, and you don't know the things that they support personally, it's really hard to say, should I be looking up to this person? Should I be idolizing this person? And it's really difficult, specifically when you're in a sales organization or a really competitive organization, especially as you start seeing success. And the formula for success includes things like hard work, a bit of luck and chance and intelligence. But specifically, I think in my world, in the insurance game, a lot of your success is going to be dictated by the people that you get some help from inside your insurance agency or inside your company. The people that I see that rise through the ranks and that grow large books of business and are successful in sales, they're typically having some kind of handing off of the torch or mentorship from somebody within their firm. And you are, as a young person in sales, you are eager to grab hold of that baton, especially if it's from somebody that has been wildly successful. And when all you're zeroed in on is the next sale and the success, it's easy to ignore the fact that, is this person maybe the person that I want to be outside of my professional world? And I think that that's something that you absolutely need to think about. And so it becomes very easy to say, I'm surrounding myself with people like me and people that I want to be like. And it's not too far of a leap to say, I want to be like that person or I want to do what that person does. And I don't know what things of the mentors that I worked with, I don't know what made them successful. I just know what they look like today. So I think it's very easy, especially in your formidable years, to say, I want to do everything that person does, or I want to impress that person, or I want to spend time with that person. And so it's not as though every mentor isn't in your life to become your friend or someone that you look up to. And I just want to have a call to action in this first episode to say, not all mentors are role models. And even though you are in your 20s or your 30s or your 40s, you're not too old or not too good to have a role model in your life. And I'm thinking about that now as I think about the role models I had before and the role models that I'm trying to have in my life today is, what's that role model? And you can call it whatever you want to call it. There was like a rage when I was an acting professional. What's your personal board of directors? And how are you getting your personal board of directors to meet with? Or you can get a career coach or a life coach or a therapist. But again, these people that are surrounding you personally, for example, to support you and your goals personally, they're still in a transactional relationship. They're getting something out of it by giving to you. You're getting something out of it by giving to them. If you think about what a true role model is, it's a really unique point. And that's why I think that it calls the attention to say, not all mentors are role models, because they are the people that are in your professional life, especially if you're working really, really hard. It's very easy to think of them like a role model, but a role model can be more abstract. A role model might be somebody within your company that you look up to, but you don't talk to all the time. And once you start separating, I want to be like this person because I admire their relationship with their kids. I want to be like this person because I admire their commitment to their golf game and how good they've gotten, even though they seemingly don't have time. Or I admire this person because they are so strict about their diet and their workout routine. I admire them. That doesn't mean that you have to be best friends with them. It doesn't mean that you might have to have a close relationship. It just means that you have another person in your life that you look up to that has role model characteristics and not just mentorship characteristics. And I think if you can define both in your life, it's easier not to fall into a trap of following habits or looking at somebody who's maybe a mentor in your life and saying, I want to do everything that that person does. For me, I had amazing mentors in my life. But I was so dedicated to my job and I was so dedicated to work and I was so dedicated to success. And I was constantly validating myself with more success that there was no way for me to take a step back and say, part of this concoction I have is wrong. And I didn't have any necessarily role models. I would have to pick and choose the good from the people I surrounded myself with professionally. And I wasn't great at that. I wasn't great at that. I saw something I liked. I saw that it was working and I mimicked it. And I also added my own bad decisions along the way. And so I think if I would have maybe had, I want to be like this person. I'm going to learn from this person. I'm going to figure out the tactics to be successful. And then I'm going to be a little guarded on how I expand that. But this is the person that I want to be like. This is the person as a rounded or individual that I want to mirror myself after. And so this concept of having more than just one and not confusing one with the other, I think is where I really wanted to kick off. It's something that's been on my mind, especially as I think about my next chapter as a professional and frankly, as a person. The last thing I want to talk about and always be connecting this to my experiences is I found a role model. And I found a role model in a place that I never thought I would find them. And whether or not your higher power, you think about coincidences, but I met somebody who also was serving time in county jail who got there 3 or 4 days maybe after me. This individual, I'll call him Spencer, was an older guy, maybe 55 years old. And he came back to Wisconsin. He's been living in Alabama for the last 15 years. He had an open warrant in the state of Wisconsin for his third OWI from 15 years ago in the Whitewater area. And he came back to Wisconsin voluntarily. While he was in Alabama, he worked at a rehab facility. He was married. He's got a couple of kids who are out of the house. He's got a house and he's got a farm, pecan farm that's big down there. And he volunteered to come back to Wisconsin to turn himself in for a 15-year-old warrant. Keep in mind, over the last 15 years in Alabama, he's been pulled over for speeding and running a stop sign. And the police down there have found that there's an open warrant for his arrest in the state of Wisconsin. And they never took him in. They said, they don't want you, it's your lucky day. No one's really searching for you. So we don't really want the hassle. So he could have lived out his life just fine. He volunteered to come back because he didn't want this situation hanging over his head. He volunteered to come back, knowing farewell that he was going to be facing some kind of jail sentence, and came back and turned himself in and sat before a judge and said, I'm here on my own regard to not only make sure that I don't have to worry about this for the rest of my life, but also because I want to set a good example for my two kids, one of which is going through some hard times. And I want him to understand accountability. And I want him to understand the importance of having a clear conscience. And the judge was taken aback by his story, but said, my hands are tied. In the state of Wisconsin, you need to serve, the minimum, which is 45 days in jail. And so Spencer joined me and he was there the duration, the entire time I was there. And this person was brought into my life to teach me. And of the last places you would think that you would ever find a role model is probably the first time that maybe I found a role model in my life. So with these two stories and these thoughts, keep in mind that not all mentors are role models, and having both in your life can allow you to achieve extraordinary things both on and off the court.